Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Field Engineer channel. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for your continued interest in this channel and our talks. Please subscribe to follow our latest content and hit the like button if you enjoyed this discussion. Communication was mentioned, and it is key both ways. So the manager must communicate to his team continuously, his on her or her team continuously, whether it is through email, weekly meetings, or even being with them in the field to keep his or her fingers on the pulse and continue living the reality of the field engineers. The more time we spend in the office, the less time we have firsthand knowledge of what is happening. But it is key also that the team, all the field engineers, communicate with their manager to keep the manager informed of their reality. Earlier at the beginning, Maurizio mentioned a situation at a food industry factory where 20 people were on his back waiting for him to fix the instrument because their pay is tied to the production. So, and what about escalating to the manager to say, hey, I'm raising the flag. I have a situation and I need help. I need higher expertise. I need another pair of hands. And this is where the manager has to step in to, as you mentioned, Maurizio, to manage the customer while the field engineer is managing the equipment, because they need their focus on the equipment and they might need help. So this is the role of the manager to also provide the required help. Sometimes it cannot be a solo job in the field and you need another brain or another pair of hands. So it's critical that the system works and flows properly. And also communicating both ways. In any situation, it's important that the field engineer feels comfortable communicating with the manager, knowing that the manager is available at any time. As managers, we could be in meetings, we could be on calls, and it's important that it is established depending on the level of urgency, which means of communication can be used between the manager and their team. So a phone call means it's now. I need you, my manager. A text is it's important that you call me back within the hour. An email is I'm informing you, respond to me within a day or so, right? So it's important to establish those standards with the team because as you said earlier, Jerry, if we don't establish the expectations, people will fill in the best way they understand or whichever way they have been functioning before. So it's important to establish those standards both ways so the manager understands what to expect from each team member and each team member understands what to expect from the manager. And these are protocols and standard procedures, standard operating procedures that can be in place so everybody is on the same page and nothing is left to guessing. And like having, a checklist. If this happens, I know what steps to take. At this level, I need to involve a colleague. At that level, I need to involve my manager. It's not a guessing game, and we know how to handle those tough situations. I don't know what has been your experience in situations where you had escalations, aggravated customers, field engineers requesting assistance, and what systems you have in place to mitigate those situations in the best possible way.
Key, I'm going to just jump in and pick up on, earlier and previously we talked about empathy and you mentioned your communication with your team in the field and perhaps we should go and spend some time with them in the field. And I think that kind of closes the loop. Like, I think we're better managers when we understand what our team are doing from day to day. So I think we should always be going out with our we should have regular contact points with our teams when they're in the field, and we should remind ourselves what it's like. I think not just from our perspective, but I think that gives us more authority, and with our teams, they look to us and say, okay, they get it. They were with me a few months ago when I was in the field. So I think it's important for us to have that relationship with our teams. In terms of escalations, I'm sure we've had all had situations where we've had upset customers. I feel as though when I was in the field in front of a customer, it's because things had gone pretty bad, and I needed to get in front and show that the business was serious about taking care of their problems. But I think I'm going to let other people talk about escalations.
Well, I think it's as we grew, it's not just a function of adding field engineers, but it's adding the envelope of support and escalation around the engineer. So we've built technical support organizations, dispatch and back office teams, a tactical operations team, and several layers of management, not to make the organization too vertical, right, or top heavy, but to allow escalation path. Because the biggest thing the engineers told us is, I need somebody that's available. When I'm standing in front of the machine, I'm going to keep calling somebody at Sartorius till I get somebody to pick up the phone, because the need is now. And that's what people have to realize sometimes. Well, I'm on my way to a meeting. Well, nobody's more important than the field engineer standing in front of the customer. That's true north, right? It's always what we're doing for the customer. So you have to have the discipline to build the organization and to take the risk of investing in an organization to make the field engineer successful. It can't all rest on their shoulders. And you need a variety of escalation paths, and you also need people in different venues of support to get them the answers they need. It's not just tech support. It's not just the back office. There's other people involved. And it's the culture that when the field engineer calls, as you said, Guy, if they've called, then it's a real problem, right? So it's trying to avoid. The best thing is, mitigation, right? If you can not let it become an escalation, then you're doing the right thing, right? That's what the goal is.
And one thing, Jerry, I want to build on is what the customer sees is the field engineer. They have to know that behind the field engineer, there's a whole organization of tech support, of management, of expertise that can intervene when that field engineer raises the flag and say, hey, I reached my limit, I need someone. So sometimes customers can mistaken the fact that, everything is on the shoulders of my field engineer. That is true, but it is the job of the manager to make sure that that field engineer is supported at any time, and the whole organization is built in a way to provide that support and that expertise when needed. That's why also written procedures are important, because there are trigger points at different levels of the escalations and the support to the field engineer that can be triggered. And the customer will see that everything is properly handled in good hands, because the organization is customer focused and they know how to act in those situations.
And that's an important point, if I may, make the customer trust the organization, not just the field engineer. Because typically the field engineer is their best friend. He's the person they see. He's the face of the company. But then they put everything on the field engineer. Tech support questions, scheduling questions, billing questions, product quality. They have to know there's an organization of people that can help the customer with all these different issues. And if the engineer's not there, that somebody can take his place, that they're not always, putting all that pressure on the engineer. So there's a real, that's a very good point. You need to have them trust the organization, not just the engineer. And that will also de-stress the engineer and allow them to focus more on what you're paying them to focus on, right? Which is being a field engineer. So we've learned that lesson.
Put yourself in. Go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
Oh, okay, Charlie. I would just say technology is also a ally here, right? To Jerry's point that they need to see the system of support to the field engineer. So digital toolkits are popular today, with giving people the tools for real-time support, augmented reality, AI, whatever you want to call it. Those kind of systems really do aid. And it's impressive to a customer to see that type of pre-planning for the enterprise to support, when they can look up an order and give them an answer. Oh, here's what the status of that may be, or even a billing solution, to give them the resources to have some of those answers or quickly document a need expressed by the customer while on site is impressive to the customer. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thanks, Bruce. So I was going to make the point, put yourself in the shoes of a customer where an engineer doesn't have that support, and they've reached the edge of their knowledge and they're floundering, and you're sitting there. Business integrity is destroyed in an instant.
Right.
If you don't have that, or if it takes your engineer half an hour to get hold of someone, customers sitting there and observing that, and it looks terrible on your business. So you need to have well-trained people who have everything there to support them and to give that impression to the customer that it's okay. People can't know everything. That's fine. But we'll get them in touch with the right people who know the answer, who will get your system back up and running.
Yeah, we go back to communication, right? Communicating to the customer what the organization's processes are in case there is a tricky situation that arises, and how the organization reacts to support the field engineer, to support the customer in those situations, so they are not left in the dark wondering what is next.
Let's take us back to the old days, before cell phones and everything. You'd have a problem that we're describing here. The first thing you do as a field engineer to the customer, may I borrow your phone? and you basically commandeer their office for the next 45 minutes while you call and try to get information to relay. So just look at the advantages we have today with the communication means.
But this is also because the products in general, so they have evolved so much. And I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would learn as a service engineer your product, it's electromechanical, and then you would go on site. Now we have the software, you have customization, you have patches, firmware, hardware, new software. So also for the service engineer on site, 2 words I heard from you guys, perfect, communication and trust, because, and also not having all the questions answered right away, because you have now experts in networks, so you are networking all the instruments, you have software people just dedicated to the software side. So the service engineer is maybe able to do the standard things, but need to have all the application people, all the R&D in the background covering also for what she does not know and can come up later than with an answer. And so I think this is also very important, the communication, to be able to take note and tell the customer, okay, look, I will take care of it. I will come out with an answer. Whatever the answer is going to be, but it's on my to-do list, and it's not forgotten. So that's, for me, very, very much important.
Right. I want to go back to a point that Jerry mentioned earlier, and that was about the fact that the customer understands that not everything lies on the shoulders of the field engineer. And I want to touch upon the principle of work-life balance, so that it is true, not everything lies on the shoulders of that field engineer, because that field engineer needs downtime too. And when the field engineer needs downtime and they schedule vacation, they should be able to leave for their vacation and rest assured that their customers are taken care of in their absence, and they do not need to check their emails or keep their phone on. Sometimes we do, because sometimes we know a detail that my team needs in my absence, but ideally the person will need to make sure that they are not leaving any loose ends before they take vacation, and that they hand over to their backup properly if there is anything pending, maybe a minor repair that is waiting for a part that their backup needs to take care of, these little things. But if we want to talk about work-life balance, where do you see the role of the manager in this to ensure that field engineers get the downtime they need so they come back refreshed and ready for the next wave of service calls, right?
It's good planning, right? I mean, we all know that downtime is required. I mean, just think of it as a service organization, as a team. We can organize, 5,000 preventive maintenance calls and, 2,000 on-demand calls. Surely we can plan for the downtime for vacation, holiday, training. It's the unexpected ones, the injuries or the sickness that are most difficult. But I think it goes back to that empathy, knowing this is strategic, right? That we have this downtime, they're going to come back at their best. So let's plan for it and move resources around. It's not ideal, but it's a necessary.
Yeah, I agree with Bruce. And part of it is how well you do your planning. Have you budgeted enough bandwidth into your resource planning? We try to always look at it not at 100% utilization. You need to have bandwidth to address emergencies. You need to have people placed closer to the customer. Over the years, we've looked at travel expense per engineer. Are we reducing travel costs by getting the engineers closer to the customer, higher concentrations of engineers in key metro areas? So there is redundancy and backup. But that falls on us, really, right? How we have to plan. And we have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to the bottom line as well. It's the cost of service. What is the customer experience you want to deliver? And you have to put a price tag on it. It's not free. Talking to my bosses, but you know what I mean.
That's very true. And this is where sometimes the manager is in a tricky situation, because the manager is trying to build the case, a business case, to say, okay, this is the workload. These are the work hours of my team. They are at 90% utilization. Mm-hmm. I want to keep them more like 80% so that we account for peaks in demand or vacations. And I need the budget to add a headcount for next year. And, they need to have approval from above to be able to get that additional headcount. And this is where it is the manager's job to build that business case, but he needs the understanding of his team, because he might not get the business case approved and the budget approved, right? I don't know how it has been in your experiences, Bruce, Maurizio, Charlie.
I think. Oh yeah, go on, Charlie.
Thanks, Maurizio. So I think I absolutely agree with what Bruce and Jerry have already said, insofar as you've got to do your planning well. Equally, if you are not getting the headcount, then we need to be clear what the impact of that will be. We won't hit our metrics. We won't be able to deliver on our SLAs. Is the fine that we're going to get going to outweigh the investment that we need to make? And I think making sure that we make those arguments really plain and clear. The other point I wanted to make is setting the standard as a leader. If we're going on holiday and we're checking our emails, checking our phones, and our people see we're not really on holiday, I think that sends a really bad signal. Equally, we should trust our teams. They should be able to operate without us, and likewise, so that we can then say, hey, I'm taking my holiday. When it comes to them taking their holiday, you have to switch off. Of course, we've all done it. Oh, just check one or two things. I think it's to be discouraged, but I'm guilty as the next. But I do want to make sure that my team are clear that if I'm away, and you'll have to deal with it. And again, put in have lieutenants, put in the structures where an escalation, people know who to escalate. They're clear on what the plan is when you're not there. But I think the onus is on us to set the standard and have a plan in place.
Right.
Sorry, Maurizio, you're going to say something.
No, just perfectly correct. I mean, it's the thing about the escalation, right? So you should make clear that, when you are on vacation as a manager, call me if something is burning, right? And also, it all depends on the company size, because if you have a very small team and, someone is ill, someone is on vacation, then the other ones need to jump in. Sometimes also you as a manager, as a team leader, you need to, hands-on, take your bag and go also on site. And this is where I guess you need a bit more, leadership on top to motivate this even smaller team in those situations, to make sure that everything works with the same quality as well when the team is smaller due to this vacation or ill sickness moment during the year.
But it's also teaching people to use the organization and the escalation path. Because I find sometimes with salespeople or customers, it's easy just to always call me, because then, you don't have to go through different iterations of talking to different people. So you have to make them trust the organization. We have a single point of contact. But if I'm not available, if I'm on an airplane, if I'm somewhere else, you're not going to get the response you want. And I only have a certain amount of bandwidth. But you only get one shot at that with customers. Okay, I'll trust you and call your call center, but I better get results or I'm going to come back to you. So it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
You wanted to say something, Bruce?
No, I was just agreeing with Jerry's point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Sometimes you're hesitant to give out the direct cell number, right, of a field engineer because they're going to call that person, and you can't control when they're out and pre-call everyone saying, by the way, I'm going to be out for 2 weeks. So absolutely, you need the enterprise system and to have the trust in it that it performs.
Right. And going back to the field engineer, sometimes they provide their cell phone number to the customer because they want to be servant, right? But the trick here is that what if they are on a flight or they are in a no service area? Then the customer is calling and wasting time versus following the process, which is call the tech support, get phone support, and then they will dispatch maybe another field engineer who is available for you, Mr. Customer, because as much as your field engineer is a servant and wants to be there for you, sometimes he or she are not available, and following the process and using the existing system is the right way to go. And also to be sure that the request is logged properly and documented for historical service also. I think we can keep going and going. I noted so many ideas that we can build on, but that could be for another time. Maybe we are at the tip of the hour. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you very much, Bruce, Jerry, Maurizio, Charlie, and I thank you for your time and your input. It has been quite informative today, and maybe we'll get the chance to hold another call at another time and maybe continue our discussion. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you for inviting.
Take care.
Bye now.